Make ready. Show clear. Woo! Let's look.
Should be 2 alpha on everything. I slowed it down just enough to kind of shoot 2 alpha on everything.
Hostage is safe. Let's go look at the last one.
Yeah. So that's basically just the difference in shooting like a hammer, where you're just pop up, regardless of where the sight is, even though you're watching the sight, versus slowing down just for a second to actually let the sight settle back. Oh, not bad. 4 alpha, 2 Charlie.
We've given it some thought, and I wanted to share kind of just the pros and cons and what it felt like actually running this system. So for starters, the rear end of the gun. The mechanism and the firearm are set up in such a way that it is a readily changeable portion of the firearm. So definitely a positive, and it was actually a lot of fun to run it with the folding adapter. So the magazine release on this particular firearm is the paddle style magazine release that sits ambidextrously on both sides of the firearm. What's great about that is it actually allows the shooter, whether left-handed or right-handed, to reload the firearm 2 different ways, or at least to extract the magazine. The standard way would just be to depress with the trigger finger and the magazine drops free. However, the shooter also has the option to take their support hand and in one clean motion, use the thumb to actuate the release and strip the magazine. So it was an absolute blast to run this with a suppressor. It felt really clean. It was pretty sharp from a recoil perspective, but it just felt good. And it was pointable, it felt right. Now, when you lose the suppressor off of this platform, that heavier bolt that makes the weapon a fairly decent suppressor host can kind of come back as a double-edged sword, because then you're feeling an increased recoil impulse with a polymer frame and a heavy bolt. So a lot of mass moving around in an overall lightweight package produces an increased recoil impulse. Now, granted, we're talking about a 9mm cartridge, so it's not like there's a whole lot of recoil in the first place, but there is a material difference when comparing it to others in the category. So just something to keep in mind. So if we look at the grip angle first, this was an area that I wasn't particularly thrilled with. For me as a shooter, I tend to like that vertical style grip. It lets me get better access to the trigger for those more comfortable and quick follow-up shots. Now, that's just me personally, but it was an area where I felt like I was really having to hyperextend or overextend my hand in order to get it in position to actuate the trigger. Now, this is an ambidextrous safety, which generally speaking is a positive or considered to be an upgrade on most firearms. In this particular instance, there is not a differentiation between the right side and left side safeties. They're exactly identical. And while this is great for being able to choose which side of the gun you're going to end up setting up for, once you're in that position, if I flip to fire and then I go to grip the gun, you can see this point of contact here. And that's where the safety is actually contacting around my first knuckle. So if this were my personal firearm, what I would probably do is actually sand down this portion of the non-dominant side safety. So just something to consider. And this is of course the HK style or MP5 style charging handle, somewhat what you see on the UMP as well. Because of the nature of the size of the actual charging handle, as well as where it contacts with the top Picatinny rail, you'll see that it's basically up snug and touching right into the rail. And what that does is, as you're locking it open, you can actually pinch yourself or get contact with the rail, and it's generally uncomfortable. It can also mean that when you go to slap the charging handle down to send the bolt home, that you can contact that top rail or potentially even bump the front sight, where you don't get then a full purchase to send the bolt home. Now, there are some aftermarket accessories that basically address each of these potential issues, which again are more personal shooter preference issues than anything, but just again as a point of consideration for you guys. So, with that said, I hope you enjoyed the run of the CZ Scorpion Evo 3, and until next time, we'll see you on the range.
716 is 096, 4 Vic, 8 packs, Redcon 1, green to green. How copy, over?
096, this is 716, roger, over. 091, 1 pack, green, green, over. This is 716, roger, over. 16, 2, 1 Victor, 2 packs, Redcon 1, over.